New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. We're so glad you're here with us wherever you're tuning in from. We know it's one of those time zones, and we're just happy to be with you. So, technical news. If you're joining us, please feel free to sign in, let us know where you are, say hello, push the like buttons, and sit down and join us for a lovely time of chit-chatting.
It's Rockin' the Love, folks. I'm Gil. This is Robyn. And I know you can see over here our guest today, Patty, who we will introduce officially a little later. So this is an experiment. We are coming to you live today.
We're coming to you live
from the CSL convention, the Centers for Spiritual Living convention in Indian Wells, California. So we've been having a fun time and learning about some different stuff. And the theme of the conference is Embrace the Now, which we have done, and you will learn more about that, and we are doing in this moment.
Yes, we are doing it. And since we're doing it, I say we introduce Patty now so she's not watching us like TV.
Okay.
Because I know she'll have ideas and things to say. So
that's probably a really good idea. So that's what we're going to do. So, folks, let me tell you how this is Patty Rumsa. She is a minister, a reverend, and she is the co-director of Golden Heart Spiritual Communities. And I know that she has a real heart to connect people and to serve the larger world and community. And I learned something about her in the last 2 minutes, and that's that she's been very much involved in youth work throughout her life, which she doesn't know, but is very common with Robyn and I.
Yes.
So really briefly, embracing the now. We're going to have another guest on today as our first guest. We're very excited, and then they couldn't make it. And Patty, I met yesterday. Yesterday. We met Patty yesterday. And I just today went into a moment of going, what do we do? And had a moment of vision. And the only person that came to my mind was Patty. So we're going to see why that is while we have this talk, because
no pressure.
Thank you.
There's intentional relationship is our theme today.
Yeah.
Right? And it really felt like somehow this was an intentional thing that needed to happen, even though it was a very quick thing that needed to happen.
That's one word for it.
So let's just start with intentional relationship, because I really think it's a theme of our show. I think that's really what it's about, right? On some levels, creating intentional relationships. So how would either of you describe intentional relationship for you?
Wow. You go first.
I go first. Okay. I would say intentional relationship is about making making a choice, and particularly for me, it's an important choice about being in relationship with myself. And if I can make the choice to see myself as a loving whole being, then that supports me in doing the same outwardly. That's my first thought on it.
My thought on it when you said that was like I came to intentional relationship backwards. Is that when I started years ago working with youth, is that I was very separated from myself and had a very different upbringing with a lot of trauma and abuse. And so it was through all of the service of others that I was able to reflect back and start to have an intentional relationship with myself. So I came to intentional relationship by going through others, by being in service. And then over the years, it came back to myself, where now I know that I am the other. And so now it's an intentional, deep relationship with deeply loving myself and deeply embracing the other, since we are one. So that's for me now what intentional relationship, as I broaden it out to all people on the planet.
Wow. I was like, okay, yeah, yes. I mean, that brings up for me the discovery to intentional relationship.
Yeah.
Because it is a journey, right?
Yeah.
It's a journey.
Absolutely. And, part of what yesterday when I met my friend is I was sharing when I'd heard your names and he had shared, I knew you did relationships. And I was looking as the newest relationship for me of being a relationship with a beloved, with a partner. And that it became very intentional for me, but I finally found some of the missing pieces. And so I had an intentional relationship with my divine. I had an intentional relationship with others. However, I left that deep intentional relationship of that type of partnership out. And so that's my new discovery.
No, that's good. And I think when we thought about intentional relationships, I think first came up, obviously, partner type relationship, and then my relationship with myself and God. I'm not saying it like they're nothing. Yeah. Those things. But then I thought, I mean, like, what about just even our intentional relationships with, I mean, I guess this falls under ourselves, but when we go, so what's coming up for me is the story about when I was in, I think, practitioner training or something, I don't know, some classes, some spiritual class. And I realized I used to go to my friend's bar, and I'd sit at the bar and he'd have the TV on and we'd watch Jerry Springer show. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, just those choices we make about being intentional with our choices. What do we watch? What magazines, what gossip do we subscribe to? Where, how do you begin to be intentional in that way?
For me, it's a choice. I mean, it is, for me, it's of absolutely living my truth and living what I believe the philosophy of New Thought, Science of Mind is. It's of living that truth, and it is of applying always, so that I have to stop seeing the other as the other, and choose how do I see myself as them. And that's intentional because it looks so separate for us, and there's so much stuff, and being love in all things. And that's that intention.
Thank you, Patty. What really came to mind, and since we're here at the convention, was Reverend Edward Gil last night as the community spiritual leader for this organization that we are all a part of. He spoke about, and it struck me with what you said about, I couldn't watch Jerry Springer anymore. And my memory of Jerry Springer is a mess.
Yeah.
It's a big mess, right? It didn't matter what their topic was. It turned into a fight and a brawl and a who knows what. So, but Edward was talking last night about this idea of how we have to embrace the mess, right? And I was thinking that there's this part of being in an intentional relationship where we don't pretend that messes don't exist, but we don't buy into them in the same way. We don't watch them for entertainment. You know, we don't involve ourselves in them because we need that in our lives to keep us feeling alive, right? What do you think about that?
I haven't been talking much lately, so I've got a lot to say apparently. Well, drama is addictive. Watching those things is addictive. People who don't know something else don't know another way of being. They don't know, if you hadn't been modeled, if you hadn't experienced and even had the understanding that you can have something different. And so that mess for me, and the journey for me, has been dealing with acknowledging and becoming aware of the mess inside of me and loving it, and just of being aware, because it was only then that then I can see the other in any relationship. If it's my friend, if it's a colleague, if it's, you know, community, if it's the person who believes differently and behaves differently in the world than I do. And so it is messy and it's not perfect, and you have to hold complex ideas, because somebody can be, clean up my language here. Somebody can be very challenging. Oh, well, I don't know why, but somebody can be very challenging, and that doesn't mean that they're still not love. You know, that doesn't mean they're, you know, and that requires that, for me, the depth of going within to dealing with my mess. Because if I don't deal with my own mess, I can't deal with others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's when you think of, I'm thinking of Jerry Springer. I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't watch that show. It was like so much drama.
And orchestrated drama.
Yeah.
And like egging it on,
Mhm.
and creating that energetic in other people and in people that watched it and swore by it and all that. I mean, it was, yeah, it leads us down this road of, you know, the slippery slope.
Yeah, I mean, because people feel the energy and they don't know that there's another energy called love and compassion that has that same high
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
as that other thing, you know,
Right.
of going on, and they don't really know that you can have that benefit. Has been my experience with people.
Yes, I would have to agree with you.
And at the bottom of that, I would say that when they do have that other, then they're afraid they're going to lose that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is safer.
Ah, wow,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, I think for myself, I've been in this movement for 35 years, minister for 21, and I am very intentional in certain areas of what I did. Yet there were some parts that were unsafe for me to really embrace all of that, you know,
Mhm.
until I finally, and that's how Gil and I connected, I finally had decided two things. I am going to be authentically me, period, in whatever I do, embrace me, have an intentional relationship with myself. I'm not going to tone down. I'm not going to adjust. Of course, I'm going to be compassionate. And I'm going to stop apologizing for the partner of, oh, like, I'm so sorry I'm a minister, or I'm so sorry that I'm outspoken, or I'm so sorry, you know, that I'm, you know, I'm this, and that I, you know, I have a big vision. And that took me a really long time, you know, so it is scary. And it's scary now. Like each time showing up authentically as me and having a conversation with a new person, it is scary as hell, you know, because I keep waiting for like, oh, and then it's like, oh, okay, great. And because of having the acceptance, once truly accepting myself of I can only be me. Good, bad, indifferent, too much, not enough, good this day, not enough. And so that for me is the intentional relationship, you know, of really, and some people start, in my experience, they start an intentional relationship by being in partnership with somebody else, you know, and they go backwards. I went one way, there's many paths, many ways to get there.
Yep.
But it's a making a choice.
Exactly. No right way.
No.
Just make a choice, do it.
And it reflects everywhere. I mean, it reflects everywhere. You can't be loving to your beloved and then I guess I can say it, an ass to other people on the planet. You know, I mean, it's incongruent with who you are, or of your, you know, because it's my context for work. I'm a minister. Well, that just means I've studied more and I practice more and I do this thing. But somebody else who has a different job, I have to be just as loving and kind to the person who cleans the rooms, or, you know, how grateful I am for, I'm so grateful for the person who picks up my trash every day, you know, like, oh my, or, you know, every week, like, how great is that? I'm so grateful. But that is only when, for me, I can embrace that we're one, you know. So for me, it's an intentional relationship with every human being on the planet. Some days I'm better at it than others, though. Let's be honest. I'm not like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
You can ask some people.
Well, I'm actually good at it all the time, right? What's wrong, Rockin?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. On that note, I think we should go to a commercial break. That's what I think.
So, folks, let's hear a few words about the New Thought Media Network and about what's happening. And we will be back in a few minutes with Patty, and we will be rocking the love some more and talking about intentional relationships.
Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, for your continued support. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, for your monthly contribution. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, for your monthly contribution. And please help us welcome Center for Spiritual Living in La Mesa, California. Thank you for your monthly donation. And a special thanks to Hefferland Foundation for your generous technology grant. And Suze Ajay, thank you for your very generous donation. And a big shout out to all our committed donors.
Hello, we're back. How are you? We're glad you're back with us. I'm Gil.
And I'm Robyn.
And we are
That's
rocking
Patty.
today.
And I'm Patty.
With Patty. Oh. So we're having an interesting discussion a few minutes ago. Something that came up for me, you were talking about deciding to be yourself, deciding to show up and, unapologetically, right? And what struck me is it reminded me again of something that Edward talked about last night, and that was putting up the filter, putting up the screen and the filter, and and the idea for me that came through when he said that was that we try to put on whatever persona we think will make other people happy, right? Somehow they'll like us more if we have rosier cheeks, or whatever that thing is. They'll like us more if we're not as loud. They'll like us more if we're not as talkative, and the reality is that if I'm always doing that, I'm never being Gil. And I think for me, a huge part of finding that has been being in relationship with Rob, because she constantly reminds me who I am, even when I don't see it, even when I don't know what it is, and brings me back. And So I really appreciate that, by the way. And
Thanks. And I was, what you just said and what Patty was saying earlier, I was thinking, and isn't it ourselves that put ourselves in this box?
Mm.
Because I was thinking when you were saying, I always think about my minister friends who are like, a long time ago when there were chat rooms, they'd be like, I went into a chat room and boy, if you want to clear a chat room, you just say you're a minister. And things like that. But then I think about like Ayala Van Zandt or Michael Beckwith, and then it's cool to be a minister. They've made they've shape shifted so that it's not really their identity. It's just part of their credentials somewhere. You know what I mean?
I think that for me and my colleagues, some of the people I know, I think that when you get to a certain status, you're in a whole different boat, of what is possible and not possible. And for me, it was many factors. It wasn't just one factor. So it was my own. I mean, I've been single for a long time, so I didn't have that partner to help bring you back to reminding of who you are. And depending on what your background was, like mine, that was not harmonious, was not a happy family, was not all of those things. I had to learn those things that I learned through ministers and practitioners and people who loved me. So I had to teach myself those things. And of course, I chose a path that I got to practice it all the time. And then, again, for me, there's a lot of rules as a minister. We have a code of conduct. There's how we can interact with certain things. And so, yeah, you do put yourself in the box. And so for me, I only can speak of my box because I know that box really well before. Geez, was like, it wasn't simple. I mean, I was saying, that's what I told God, just 2 weeks ago at the end of the year, I was like, come on, I'm fabulous. Like, I am really great, but I had to really embrace it, a different thing without the filters, is that I had to embrace, I was sick for almost 2 years when I'd never experienced that. I didn't feel like myself. And if I don't feel like myself, and then I want to filter, like somehow you're going to accept me when I can't accept me and the experience I've had and stuff. And then it was just like, what we teach and what you said was that I can't put on a filter. I can't take away what happened. I am me and I have to be me and embrace it. And it was tenuous. It was tender. And then you have to trust, and again, not being in partnership with somebody, you have to trust that conversation. But the sweetness of when you do your inner work is the divine, I was like, I've made the statement. I'm like, to the divine, you know exactly the perfect person for me, no matter what it was. And I am a minister. That's who I am. I can't apologize. And yes, I used to, when I would date somebody, I'd say as a minister, bingo, bango, isn't that fabuloso? I mean, that was about how it worked. It was not an easy thing at all. And so then you get like, oh God, I'm a spiritual teacher. I'm an education teacher. And a friend said to me, he said, until you accept this is who you are, this is what you do, this is how you show up in the world, nobody can. And I'm like, well, hell. And it's simple, and we know that. But when you don't have the experience and you don't have the modeling of healthy, intentional relationship, then you can have a healthy relationship with the divine. You can have a healthy relationship with your friends. You can have a healthy relationship with nature. But it's of truly accepting and embracing, it is who I am. It's not a job. It is my life's calling, however it looks. And so that's for me is like, oh, I'd like, I used to envy people like, oh, look at y'all are in love. Robert's been married forever. It's like, oh look at how, isn't that so nice? I'd be like, I'm nice too. So that's for me is that piece. It took me a really long time to get here, people.
And but that's real. I mean, that's the truth. And you know, it's funny that you say that because I remember when I met Gil, and I took him to Agape in Southern California, a spiritual center, and he started taking classes and blah blah blah. And at the end, when we were getting married, this woman said, "All these women here, and you got Gil."
Oh man!
And I said, "That's what I brought Gil."
Yeah, exactly.
He came with
Yeah.
me. But it was that. I mean,
Yeah.
like that
Oh.
perception. Yeah,
I got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
Wow, I felt that one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's what's out there. And thank goodness that you didn't buy into that nonsense. However, for many of us, it is, and that was sort of how I'd go. It's like, what the heck is wrong? I mean, like, I know who I am. I know I'm this, but there was a part of me who bought into that perception and the story. Otherwise I wouldn't have had the outpicturing,
Right.
of it. That's just a fact.
And that happens in all places in our lives.
Absolutely.
And I was just thinking, you told the story a few moments ago of stealing a pulpit. Don't tell anyone. But of stepping into a position and finding out later that somebody else had wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
So it happens,
Mhm.
right? And that's just how it is. We all have our places we need to be and our people we need to be with. Another thing that really struck me while you were talking and while we've been talking about this topic is that that there are so many opportunities in our lives to listen to the reflection of what we need in our lives, of how we can shift our lives, whether it is trusted confidants, whether it is friends, whether it's family. There's all kinds of places where people support that. And I think it's important, whether we're in a relationship with a significant other or not in one, to not get too focused on that or on any relationship. Whenever people get too focused on, for instance, being a minister, if I get too focused on how everybody out there is going to relate to me, then I'm going to start having losses in terms of that, because I'm not focusing on who I need to show up and be in those relationships, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that topic is so deep and broad and expansive. It for me, it is again pivotal to everything I do and be and am. Is I have to know who I am and what I stand for and what wakes me up every morning, and that I'm only here to reveal the divinity within me. I'm only here to love and spread joy. And then that is in all of those other relationships. And yes, we do get attached to whatever your title is or your job. And some of us have very intimate jobs when you're dealing with people's innermost aspects of themselves. But the thought that just keeps coming back to me in this moment is pivotal is my relationship with the divine. Some people call it God. I don't care what you call it, but it is that level of honesty with yourself, and then everything else, because for me, we're all one, and we have to live it and to practice it and to, and so I don't know if this is making sense, but it is okay. It is of showing up authentically that way. I think of, when we're talking about taking a pulpit that somebody else had intended that I didn't know, but within that process, at some point, things started changing in our country, and what I could once do, I could not do well because it wasn't received well. And then I had to get really honest with myself and say, I am me, and I have my relationship with the divine, and I have a way I am to show up, if it's as my friend, as a minister, as a family member. And I said, and so it is as a minister, and I am going to be me. I'm going to speak that which is flowing through me. And you like me or you don't, because the worst thing you can do is fire me, because otherwise I can't get out of bed. I can't adjust it down for anyone, because I've always been told, you're too loud, you're too bold, you're too energetic, I like to cuss. I cuss.
Do it.
Hey, I've been not recorded yet in 20 some years, so I'm gonna try not to today. I don't want a blooper reel of me. But I think it's that all really authentically embracing the life. But for me, the foundational part is knowing who I am and what I'm about in life. And so then during these turbulent times and what Dr. Edward called us forth, because that's like my tune of let's reevaluate, how are you showing up in life? And we need it, so people need to learn how to experience intentional relationships, live an intentional relationship.
So, okay,
Settle down.
settle down. Ministers be gone. So, yes to everything. And so let's back it up. I mean, yes, this is 30 years down the road for you and 20 years or more down the road for you. I mean, plus different places, but so where does one start? Where, someone out there listening that is like the be intentional with the divine. I can't pay my rent. I can't, whatever. So doesn't like me. Where do we really start? How do we begin to hone those qualities and really believe what we've come to believe about ourselves, which is that we're fabulous.
We're fabulous.
Absolutely fabulous, amazing, all of that. Well, I've been talking so much, so it's your show. I mean, I definitely know what I teach, and I know what I'm doing right now, and I know how I am coaching people. And for me, it has been the quickest, most expedited process that I've been doing for about 7 or 8 years. So I will share what I do. Is for me foundational to what people do. I work with people who are spiritual seekers or spiritually curious or spiritually wondering, or they like the sparkle and they want to say, hey, how did you get it? So for me, first and foremost is teaching people to have a relationship with the divine of their understanding. And there's a process. And first and foremost, it's begin to say, oh, what do you believe? Do I have a divine? Where is the divine? How is that? And then begin to just have a conversation. And once people, and I have done it with people, no spirituality whatsoever, just brand new. And I begin to share that information. I said, just begin to talk like you do with your best friend and have a conversation. I said, because then it will rush in to begin to hear. And people look at me like I'm sort of crazy. They do it and they go, oh, it works. And so for me, just because that's how I'm centered now, is I go to the divine or God or love or the universe, I don't care, and to just begin to have a conversation and be guided and directed on how to do it. And then begin to, when you're interacting with others, teaching them to begin to see that person is the divine too. And it's very foundational. And so that which you don't like, basic. That which you like about them is within you. That which you don't like about them is within you. And that's where the work begins for me, is that level of authenticity. Because I think it's much easier than we make it. I think we complicate things really, really, really way too much. And so we are in a philosophy, New Thought, that says we're one. But people want to talk about it or relate the intentional relationship, you live it.
I think people want to, it's safer on some level to hold things out there.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think we do and what we miss sometimes in our teaching is it's really about offering people the opportunity to reclaim their power and reclaim who they are. Because if I am at the mercy of what someone else thinks of me, or what someone else wants to do, or what someone else thinks I should be doing, then I'm not really at choice as to what what I'm doing. I'm letting them make the choice for me. Right? And if we can start to shift that and see, so not only do you look inside and see what's really you and begin to accept that, but you take the power to go, okay, either I like that or I don't. I want to continue acting that way, or I'd like to look at new ways to act around that particular topic, right? And if we can do that, then I'm taking the power back, instead of just going, you know what, these people just don't get me. They don't like me. And I've seen people do that. And I'm not that I've ever done it. But I've heard.
You said that, and it's so interesting to me, because the conversation that I just had with my new friend is they come from a very different path, a very different way of life thing and all of that. And when we were talking about it, and I had said, asking a question, and they said, I just woke up one day and I had to reflect on my life and how was I showing up in the world, and I didn't like how I was showing up, and so I had to look at how do I want to show up in the world. And that was their path. Very simple. They began to just look at their own behavior and how they were treating people, because part of the share was they were raised to treat people differently. Now all people aren't raised,
Right.
but they were, and they just said, I didn't like how I was in relationship with others. And I decided to make a choice. He had a little bit different wording, and it was that simple. So I think that, many ways, again, lead us back to, but at the simple level of how are you showing up?
Well, and that's really what I was hearing is it really starts with an awareness, and just awareness and an opening to what's possible. We all wake up on different days and go, this is a good day, this is a bad day, whatever, in our experience, in our world. But really being able to separate and listen in a new way, because it's one thing when we listen to the stories and the old, and it's another thing when we listen and go, do I really believe that? Is that really the truth? Do I not like to get up in the morning, and do I have to have coffee to get moving? Or is this something that I've been told and this is what I do? Really beginning, it's like you really begin to be an explorer and start to explore and decipher your life and uncover the patterns, and then comes the willingness, to surrender to whatever you want to call it, the divine, the universe, the infinite. But I'm going to just say, even to surrender to your truth, that, if you've been told all your life that, you're not a good artist, or you're not good at this, that, and the other thing, is that the truth? And is that, can you begin to change that thought pattern?
So it reminds me of the Christmas pot roast story. Heard this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where we cut off the ends of the roast and put it in a pan, and then we find out, hey, Mom, why do we always cut this off? She goes, I don't know. Ask Grandma. She always did it. Grandma, why do we do this? Well, I only did it because my pan was too small. That was it. I had to cut it off to make it fit. But we get an idea in our head, and suddenly we think it now becomes factual and true in all situations, and that's not the case.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that you have an awareness, and you can have an awareness, and then you look at what the story is, it true? And even if there is that part of you that says it is true, I'm not worth very, you know what I mean? Because you can be very separated from the truth of who you are. Still is that then you become aware that that's what you're aware of. So you become aware that, oh, I don't feel good about myself. Oh, this is, because once you accept, as Edward would put it, the messiness, once I accept my nature is to be loud. No, my nature is to be a smartass. It's just who I am.
I knew there was a reason I liked you.
Once I could accept that, and my nature is to be compassionate, and my nature is to be loving. Once I accept, we can accept the nice stuff about us.
Yeah.
But the other stuff is once I became aware of it, then I could say, so I could do it consciously, say, is it true? Or even if there's a part of me that thinks it's true, this isn't how I want to live, because I would look at people and say, but look at what they've got. And I'm
Over
like,
there.
look, oh, wow, look, okay, it's done. I'm not the first person who's ever attempting to do this, and at the same time, people were seeing it within me as we see it within others. And I think that's what the beauty of this situation is, this community is that there's a lot of mixtures of where people are at. And awareness is the first step. Always awareness of how wonderful it is, or awareness of how much it sucks.
Yeah.
Our humanness, our messy humanness, as Edward would say. And it's both. And that's the beauty of what you're doing.
Yeah, and I was thinking about what you said, that my nature has probably always been to be the rebel. I know there's no one in the room that can relate to that. So looking at my producer folks. But it's always been to be the rebel. So if somebody said, you can't do that, I'd be like, watch me. And inside I might go, how the hell am I going to do this? But you can bet I was going to do it, And then I had to get to a place, though, to decipher if I wanted to do it. Because half the time I didn't want to do it. I just needed to prove that I could do it, And so I think, it's such a intricate journey that we're leading. And I know people are out there commenting, and I just want you all to know that we can't see it, but we know you're there. And so why don't we take a break? We'll look at some of those and come back and talk to you about that.
Good afternoon, folks. Once again, I'm Gil.
I'm Robyn.
And we are here rocking the love today. And for those of you who may have joined us since the first part of the show, I wanted to take a moment and reintroduce our friend Patty, which we've just determined I have known for less than 24 hours. So this is Reverend Patty Rumsa. I'm looking at her card because I want to make sure I pronounce the last name correctly. And we haven't even asked you where you're from, where you take up residence in these days.
I currently, as of the last year and a half, I live in Oklahoma City.
Wow.
I've lived a few places, but that's where I am at now.
Okay. Well, she's a co-director of Golden Heart Spiritual Communities. She has multiple gifts, I know, and I've heard about many of them so far. And we're just excited and privileged to have her here.
Yes. And we've been talking a lot about intentional relationship with ourselves and with the divine. And so my question is, how do you take that out into the world? And just before you answer that, we've heard a little bit about this from you. And we know that you are rocking the love in the world. I mean, you're really opening up portals not only for your community, but the larger community. And tell us.
Thank you. And thank you again for having me here. So there's two ways right now, or a few ways right now that I'm taking it out. One is I'm co-director with a dear friend of mine of 35 years in Golden Heart Spiritual Communities. And our passion is supporting people on a spiritual journey of life, of discovering who they are and forming sacred circles so that people in general can support one another, learn and grow together, that practitioners can learn and grow together, and that ministers can learn and grow together. So that's one aspect of what we're doing. Our other passion in Golden Heart is to have sacred travel, one being a sacred education trip each year, and one having a sacred fun trip each year. Because that's sort of the balance of us.
Sacred fun.
Sacred
I'm sorry.
fun.
No,
Yes.
Okay, we're going off now. There's no sacred fun.
Yes, and so Robert's known me, the producers know me for a while, and he knows I'm pretty joyful, and I love doing that. We're super excited that Sandra and I have been committed to social justice, to civil rights. It has been my passion for way before I ever entered this movement. And so at the end of April, we are taking a civil rights tour in Alabama. We're going to Montgomery, to the Legacy Museum and the Living National Memorial. I call it a different name. I call it the Lynching Museum because that's what it is. And we're going to be joined by Dr. David Alexander, my friend, and another colleague, Carolyn Wilkins. And so we're going to be going on a tour so we can see and become aware of what the history is of slavery, of mass incarceration, of African Americans, of what their experience has been in our country, and to intentionally have the conversation, become aware, understand what our fellow brothers and sisters of color actually experience. And so we're taking a tour there, and then we spend one day in Montgomery and we spend one day in Selma walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And so we're passionate about that because for me, we must be who we are in the world. And I am like, enough is enough. And I personally, while I'm doing it, I believe passionately that white people need to take responsibility for our activity on this planet, and we must become aware. And so we have a great mixture, we have a great group. So that is our passionate part, is to add healing, to have our teaching to the world. Like, we can't pretend it doesn't exist anymore, and we can't pray it away, and we can't talk it away, and we can't ignore it away. So I'm passionate about that. And then I got to have some fun. So in the fall, we're doing a 5-day cruise out of Galveston, the Joyful Intention Cruise, which is mostly just to relax and have fun and hang out with your friends while we have some fun. So that is part of what we're doing. And then I do private coaching of assisting people to live an intentional relationship with the divine and their life, and to show up in the world. So that's how I show up in the world. I was quiet for a couple of years.
You're making up for lost time?
And I'm making up for it. Is I love life.
Yeah, it shows.
Thank you.
It does, very much so. It struck me as you were talking about that. I think over the last couple of years, we've, as a white male, have had this opportunity to really take a moment and allow the feeling the pain, the whatever it is that other people have experienced, to open my eyes and to go, here's what's happening, and how am I playing a part in this? And just briefly, Robyn and I were scheduled to speak in Peninsula, right? Peninsula CSL, virtual Sunday morning service, and that was the week that George Floyd was killed.
Oh.
And so, of course, we had what we were going to do, and then we had what was happening inside of us. And
What
everything.
needed to be done.
Yeah, and then what needed to be done. And so we took that moment to explore with each other what that meant and what we were feeling like. How do I respond? And then we shared that with the people and invited them into that same process. And Reverend Carolyn Douglas was so what's the word I want? She was just so willing and open to have us do that, and it was interesting. So I think the big thing is we have to take advantage of these opportunities to look at ourselves in the world, right?
Yes.
And how am I intentionally in the world?
Yeah, and for me, it's what's going on within me is also going on within the world. So when I'm not willing to look at my messiness within me, my background, all of the stuff that brought me to this point, that collectively is happening with all other human beings on the planet. And for me, I have to take that. My experience as a white person is different than Sandra's experience as a Black woman, of whose grandmother, I believe, or great grandmother, was born into slavery, and it's different. And so, but it's of allowing those two experiences that are vastly different. That's why on our trip, we're having processing groups that will be, different for one another, because it's a different experience, but it's of saying, this is what happened, period. No, and all of the stories, it doesn't matter what the stories are, because we all know individually, whatever happened to us in childhood, it still is carried through with us, right? What happened to our parents still is carried through to us. Doesn't mean it has to rule us. It means that we have to acknowledge it.
Exactly.
And then say, is this what we want? Now, for our brothers and sisters of color who have a different experience, they're having something else take place, And so when George Floyd, I remember I was sitting on my couch because I wasn't feeling well at the time. And I'm from the Twin Cities. So
oh, wow.
I know the corner. I know the corner in Minneapolis, and I'm busily calling friends because I know their experience is different, just to support somebody in that grief, but in that intentional, being willing to be uncomfortable and being willing, as you said, in all things, being willing to say, I don't know what to do, but I know I've got to do something, because this does not work for me, because you and I are one, and this isn't the world that I want to live in. I don't want my nieces to live in. I don't want the neighbor's kid. I don't want Robert's children to live in. I don't want anybody to live in. And what am I willing to do? And how uncomfortable am I willing to be? And so you two showing up and presenting, and it's not readily embraced, of people, because they're like, oh, I didn't have anything to do with it. Well, I didn't have anything to do with a whole lot of stuff that happened in life. It doesn't mean that it doesn't impact my quality of life,
Right, and it hasn't given me certain advantages or disadvantages depending on who I am and what the situation is.
Power.
I'm waiting for you to speak.
I know, everyone.
Okay, we got a few minutes left.
I think
want
it's
Robyn to
really
speak
complicated.
into the room.
It's complicated. But one of the things I want to speak to about your trip is I feel like, in addition to all the awareness and all the things you're talking about, there's a healing going on beyond the healing, beyond the healing that you see. If we really believe that there's no time and space, and that we are walking that road and holding that space and blessing the journey and opening up that forgiveness space in such a large way that we'll never know. We'll never know. But I just think the work is important, and the work is so important because we don't know. And so I really honor you and thank you so much for coming. And clearly, when we have you back, we'll dive deeper into that because it's a big topic. And if I had spoke, we'd still be here for the next hour. So
Yeah. So thank you. That was right
Come on
on.
our trip with us. Come on our
come
trip
on
with
the
us.
trip with us.
Come on
Let's all
our trip
go.
with us.
Come on, everybody.
Go to goldenheartsc.org. Come on the trip. It's all there. We would love to have you so we can create a healing presence in this and have another great conversation with these wonderful people.
So important. So if you liked what you saw today, and even if you didn't, check out New Thought Media Network. And there's so many shows there. I know there's one that you will love, absolutely. And please push that donate button because we're doing good things in the world and we're making things happen. And we couldn't do that without you. So join us next week. And I think that's all I have to say.
So we really thank you for joining us for Rockin' Love. We thank Reverend Patty so much for being here.
Thank you.
And we thank our producers, Robert and Michael,
Big
for their
hearts.
work. Thank you so much. And we thank you for tuning in. And we will see you next time at 1 o'clock Mountain, 12 noon Pacific on the New Thought Radio Network on Wednesday.
And in the meantime, rock the love out there.
Rock the love.
Woo-hoo!
Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, for your continued support. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, for your monthly contribution. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, for your monthly contribution. And please help us welcome Center for Spiritual Living in La Mesa, California. Thank you for your monthly donation. And a special thanks to Hefferland Foundation for your generous technology grant. And Suze Ajit, thank you for your very generous donation. And a big shout out to all our committed donors.